Hi y'all, and welcome to Cottage Chat, where we'll be discussing all things slow living and traditional skills. I'm so glad that you stopped by, and I hope you enjoy today's chat. Today I have joining me on Cottage Chat my husband. He builds all of my gardening projects that I come up with. When we first moved to the farm about 5 years ago, he took a permaculture class. He took camp at a farm for a week so he could learn more about farming.
Hey.
So today we're going to be sharing with you 5 ways to get planting. This is for no matter where you live, 5 ways to get planting. And it is part of a food security series that we did a couple years back. And part of that is on the blog. So let's go ahead and jump in. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, so 5 ways to get planting. And this is number 1, barter. So barter, goes back centuries before money, probably,
So
right?
we're talking about bartering for land, not just like bartering in general, but bartering for land. Being able to, if you're living on a small lot or even in an apartment, and be able to reach out to other people who actually have some property, and possibly try to work out a deal so that you could use their property to grow food.
When we lived close to Baltimore, we went to there was a weekly farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember there was a couple there who, they didn't have any land of their own, so they bartered land with different people. It wasn't even people who were their neighbors, and they would plant in their yards, different people's yards, and they would give the people produce in exchange for them having the land,
Right.
gardening the land.
Right. Yeah, they planted gardens and they did all the upkeep. And they traded produce for the ability to use their land. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's one option if if you think that, well, I don't have enough land. Well, there's always opportunities that you can just, as you meet people and talk to people, maybe if you meet people at co-ops or at farmers markets that are buying food, just talk to them about the possibility of working together to grow your own food.
Yeah, that would be a good option for people living in an apartment. If they know people who live in the suburbs who have even a small lot, they could plant in those people's backyard or something.
Yeah, you can grow a good bit on even a small lot.
And number 2 for 5 ways to get planting. Number 2 is raised beds. Raised beds are really good if we live in the Ozarks and we have very rocky soil. So raised beds are a really good option for people like us.
Absolutely.
But I want you to tell them about the hugelkultur style of raised bed. Tell them how you do that?
Right. So there's a couple of options, really. You can do so. Hugelkultur is a style of growing and planting that was actually started in the mountains in Germany, where they also have very, very rocky soil. They have very little place to go down. And what we do is we kind of modify it, is we build raised beds, traditional raised beds, and then we layer in sticks and plant matter, different sticks, usually leaves, things like that, on the bottom. And part of what that does is the wood, as it gets older and decays, it will fertilize the ground, but also before it's really broken down, it actually helps to control moisture in the soil. Those partially decayed sticks will absorb extra moisture when it's really rainy, and they'll let it out when it's dry. So that actually helps to keep your plants watered during less rainy times, and helps to keep them from drowning during more rainy times. So it's actually a really great thing. Another thing you can do for hugelkultur is you make hugelkultur beds that are pretty much literally just mounds. They're built. You construct them very, very carefully out of in the middle, the bottom part towards the middle of larger sticks, larger branches, and then weave in through them, kind of poking in through them smaller branches,
You know what? I've actually seen someone do the mounds
Mm-hmm.
where they used logs.
Right.
It was a huge
Yeah, the larger
mound.
your mound, the larger your base material will be, the bigger logs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the way they were traditionally done. These rather large logs, honestly, they would cut down trees and have basically the trees laying down. But yeah, this you can always do that if you're not wanting to try to build a bed or whatever. This it takes a good bit of work, but these huiculture mounds, they are good to plant in for long time. And as they break down, that wood decays and it becomes soil there, and it becomes an area that you can continuously plant in, or you can use that soil to build another hugelkultur mound. So it's a really great system.
So the raised beds, they're a good option if maybe you weren't planning on gardening this year, but things seem to be maybe to the going to pot. So maybe you still have a grassy green lawn and you're in the suburbs. You can just use landscaping stones, or you can buy you some untreated lumber and just build you a box, basically a frame.
Yeah.
Put it on top of your grass, put down some sticks, and then place your dirt. That's what we did over in the barnyard.
Yep. And honestly, one of the reasons a lot of people, like particularly in the suburbs, don't try to grow much is they just feel like it's aesthetically not very nice, not very appealing. Possibly the HOA doesn't let you. That's a whole other issue. But really, if you just take your time, you can actually design out a garden that is really looks nice as well as is functional, grows food. So it just
Yeah.
takes a little bit of thinking and planning, but you can really make a really beautiful yard just with foodstuffs.
Yeah. Okay, number 3 of 5 ways to get planting is container gardening. So container gardening, one of the ways we get free buckets from food grade buckets is what you want to use. And we get those free from Chick-fil-A. They have dill pickle buckets.
Right.
And so Shaun drills holes around towards the bottom of the bucket. And you can place rocks and stuff in the bottom so you're not using so much soil. A couple of, what would you say? How many?
Just a few inches.
Few inches, and then put topsoil in there. These are great to grow tomato plants in, pepper plants, herbs, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you can grow a lot of different things in buckets, and also with containers, you can also choose containers that are stackable, or ways that you can use them to go vertical, so that if you don't have a lot of space, you can use those as space saving gardening areas. So like if you have like 2 square feet, you could have a vertical garden going where you have several containers going up, and you have a lot more planting area.
Yeah, you can buy, what is it called? The green stalk to plant in. Okay.
Another thing that you can actually do with containers is for people who live in apartments is I have seen things where people use like recycled materials to create basically a wall decor that you can actually plant some smaller things in, like strawberry plants or things like that, and you can actually decorate your walls like that, and you just have a grow lights that you turn on periodically to keep them growing and healthy. So
You're
that
talking about
you can
planting
actually
on the
grow,
inside?
yeah, you can actually grow inside like that and create a basically almost a wall decor, wall mural of containers that have smaller plants in them that you can grow food in.
Mm-hmm. Number 4 of the 5 ways to grow food is hay or straw. And this goes back to, this is a Ruth Stout gardening method, where you would put down several feet, maybe 2 or 3 feet of hay,
Mm-hmm.
and you just let it sit. And you can also, you can start with a layer of cardboard if you have a lot of grass. Then you put the hay on top of that. Give it about, even in 2 to 3 weeks, that will already be decomposing. And you move the hay back, and you can see earthworms on top of the soil, on top
Yeah.
of the ground.
Oh yeah.
So this hay method is really good if you want to plant potatoes. Because this is how I have planted potatoes. This is like the third year. It does really well. You just pull back a little section of hay and you place the potato on top of the ground, and then you cover it up with several inches, 2 to 3 inches of hay, so that the potato doesn't get any sun exposure. And we got a really good crop of potatoes.
Really good
That's
harvesting.
called the Ruth Stout method if you want to look into that further.
One thing is, I always have to remember that. Yeah, honestly, you're going to need more hay than you think you do because the hay does settle, but it also does something similar to like with the hugelkultur. Is the hay also does act as a sponge, kind of soaks up moisture and lets it out slowly, and it enriches the ground. So it is a wonderful way to continue doing that. Another way to use hay is you can actually, if you have access to buying like a square hay bales, you can actually plant directly into hay bales. You have pull out little circles areas that you put a little bit of soil in to get seeds started or sprouts started, and things will grow in the hay itself as well, which is really kind of easy to do.
Oh, and one thing you want to be aware of with hay, or if you're building raised beds with wood, is to make sure that none of these items are chemically treated, because that chemical will leach into your food. So it would be good if you could find organic hay or straw, and it would also, when you're building the frames for raised beds, make sure that the wood is not treated. Okay, and now we're at number 5. 5 ways to get planting, and this is the pop-up greenhouse. This is for expanding your growing season. You may already be further along in the season, and a greenhouse would be no use to you right now. But even further north than us in the Ozarks, it still gets pretty cold right now.
Yeah.
So go ahead and start seedlings inside of a greenhouse. You can raise the temperature in the greenhouse by how many? Is it 10 degrees? I've read that somewhere.
Yeah.
So you can start your seeds in there, and then you can extend your growing season in the fall, even past your frost date, if you want to move plants inside your greenhouse to keep them going. Okay, so that wraps up our 5 ways to get planting, no matter where you are, in the Food Security Series, Day 1. We also want to tie this into slow living. How would planting tie into slow living?
Well, as you're planting food and taking care of it, watering, yeah, dealing with weeds, even like there's so many little things that you just have to slow down and tend to the little details, but also just being able to get out if you have the ability to get outside and garden in a garden, just being outside with the plants and in the dirt and just slowing down, kind of like when you're a child playing in the dirt, just taking life a little bit more relaxed pace to get to allow to watch the plants growing, to keep track of what they're needing, and just going on this journey of growing food. It's not a quick rush through. It's not gonna You're not gonna plant a seed and tomorrow you have a strawberry or whatever. You have to be patient with it, take your time, and encourage its growth. And I think that's a large part of what in the slow living movement, like it's a lot of the time it's about trying to get back to the older days, and a large part of the older days were about taking the time to work with nature and work with how things grow, not just rushing through life and taking the shortcuts.
Mm-hmm. And gardening really is therapy when you're out there, or for me anyway. If you're not focused on anything but whatever weed you're picking or the seed you're sowing, it's just so relaxing.
Oh yeah, and then seeing the butterflies and bees buzzing around and fluttering from flower to flower.
Oh yeah, it really relaxes your mind. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this podcast, chatting with Shaun, my husband, and myself. Hopefully the 5 ways to get planting has encouraged or sparked some kind of interest for you. And wherever you are, I hope that your gardening season goes well. I think we can all agree that the world needs more slow living and traditional skills. It is my hope that, in the words of the psalmist, you will proclaim with me the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name together. From Psalm 34. Well, if you're interested in more slow living, traditional skills type of content, find us on Cottage Time YouTube and at BigRedBarnandBoots.com. Until next time.